No, no worries, it's fine. Thank you. Cheers. Yeah.
Might be better other way around, actually, I think.
Sorry?
I think might be better other way around.
What do you mean?
Hold the phone. Other way around. And our woman was like...
Like that.
way.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, you're better filming than I do.
Actually, I've been to houses in the morning, man. You know, but yeah, let's give it a go. So you...
Know that, yeah?
At the moment we can get the screen, but yeah, we can get the whole screen. So what do you want to record, the screen or?
Yeah, the screen, I guess, with the speaker. Like that is fine, to be honest.
Are you going to upload this as well, or?
Yeah, it might be just one use.
Yeah, because I mean, we can finish editing in a day or so, you know. So.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, if you guys edit it, it would be like absolutely great to have it.
Yeah, we'll edit it in like when I get to office, you know, tomorrow they will start editing, and maybe day after tomorrow, you know, they will send it to you. Because it's always better if I have like 1 or 2 interviews, you know, it's always better because then, you know, it's a little bit more personal. But yeah, if you can't get it, otherwise we'll try in the pub anyway after.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Alright, thank you.
Yeah.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Very well.
Thanks for putting this together. Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, that's great. So, how you managed to free yourself from
Well,
abilities?
I need to see her later.
Okay.
I'm here for the meantime.
Okay, good.
You have to give her a good excuse for that. Or
She's doing yoga anyway.
Well, that's good.
But she finishes similar time to this vlog, 8 o'clock. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that'll be time for her, won't it?
yeah.
She won't get back in clean up. Or you go straight out again.
We're going to cook at mine.
Oh, okay. So, was she there as well?
Well, no,
Just you.
me and my mate Lawrence. You know, the next guy. I've been trying to get to join IOTA. Yeah, he's still working.
Awesome.
I tried to persuade him further in the day. He's so wants to be doing like conventional things that kind of like cave with nature or less organised nature.
Yeah, you have to be prepared to adapt to some working, particularly if you do remote stuff as well. It's very, particularly if you want, if you want very traditional office-based.
I think that's what he has right now.
Yeah.
It's comparing what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no point. If it's not what you're after, then there's no point trying to kid yourself.
Plus, he also thinks privacy is all things privacy.
Yeah.
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 Monero is not really it's the structure.
It's become a very slow computer.
Yeah, the structure of governance in Monero is a bit more like uncoordinated. It's community run.
Yeah, I think so. They actually have them full time.
They do. They supply basically everything. Imagine everything in the foundation is voted for by. Yeah, I don't think it would guarantee it.
Okay.
He doesn't think that privacy is something you can do as a second layer. So people really get something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started. Cool. Thank you everyone for coming. I don't know if you've had the chance already to visit the office. If you just arrived, please do visit it afterwards. It's really beautiful of the space over there. So of course a big thank you to Luchon. whose space is here, their experience center. It's really great for them to provide these spaces for us to do these events, because as a reminder, these kind of events are held by the community here in London, by or providing some support to organizing these events in general, by providing their offices or just startups to come in and talk. So a big thank you for Lucian, and another thank you to Michele Nati, who I don't think is here yet, that will arrive in a bit, with who these events would not be possible. Before going into the events, a few things. If you are part of a company or in general are interested to host this kind of meetup at your company or at your organization, or would like to speak about your startup, please do come and talk to me at the end of the event, and we will try to set up something. Also, if you're interested in getting involved into organizing these events, please do reach out. Look, if you want to do something, yeah, just reach out and organize something. Great, so as a reminder, what is the IOTA London events? These events happen every 2-3 months, and the goal of this is for the community to be updated into what IOTA is doing in general, what are the latest updates, what are also the companies that are building on IOTA-related technology. We had a few companies coming last time. We're going to have one ThinkStream again coming in, where they have built their own hardware, and it's people that are interested in the technology in general that come and talk to us. And in general, it's for you guys to be able to reach out to people in, for example, this kind of events that are interested, the community that is interested in the Internet of Things in general. And if you guys have any question related towards that, that you know that the people around here are ready to help you out for whatever you want in terms of support. That being said, for your awareness, there's 2 people here from the IOTA Foundation, Andrew and Charlie. So if you guys have any question related to that, please do reach out to them. Related to Lutron, we have Michele here and Echa in the end over there, who you can have a talk about for this space in general. And we're going to have first Lutron talking for 10-15 minutes about what they're doing in general, their organization. Then we're going to have Alex Sewell coming from ThinkStream, who's going to talk about their products, in general, what they have built, the hardware they're building right now on the Internet of Things. Then we're going to have Michele talk for 15 minutes about the Internet of Things and IOTA Data Marketplace. So IOTA's Data Marketplace, Michele is going to talk a bit more about it when he comes into it, but it was launched last year, and it's a place where many companies come and share their data as a secure location in general on the IOTA, in the IOTA organization in general. He's going to explain much better than I'm doing right now. And finally, a panel discussion where the 3 speakers will come in front of you, and you will be able to ask them any question related to the Internet of Things, related to your company, towards the future, how they see the evolution of the Internet of Things in general. Not only related to their company, but also related to their personal thoughts about it. And that's it. And then if you guys have other questions or want to continue chatting about it, we can go to a nearby pub and just have a few beers around that. Cool. If there's no urgent questions, we can start, I think, the first presentation with Lucian.
Sure. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Godfrey. So, name is Miguel. I've been with Luton for 15 years. I'm an electrical engineer. For the last few years, I'm doing a lot of standardization work around Internet of Things and applications, and I'm involved in several industry associations, like Lighting Europe and the Lighting Industry Association here. And what I do is a lot about IoT. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the things that we're looking at for IoT, connectivity, what it brings, and some of the challenges that maybe are yet to be answered. So with that, IoT, I'm sure you've seen drawings like this many, many times, a lot of things involved in them. But I want to get more into the buildings. So a building, sometimes for me, hard to assess how much people know about buildings and what's in a building. There are a lot of services in a building. Lighting, heating, ventilation, security, IT infrastructure, door access, all these things, right? So today, when regulators and even customers talk about lighting controls in buildings, they care about energy. And if you've been looking at all about what's going on in the lighting industry, LED lighting is everywhere. And with a bit of occupancy, people think, okay, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else with my lighting controls. But in reality, a building, you can do a lot more with lighting control systems. asset tracking, asset management, property management, predictive maintenance, digitalization, and there is more. I don't think any of this will be a surprise to you, I wouldn't expect, but it's going to for completeness sake. And if you're looking at a home, right, a lot of the stuff going on in the smart home, appliances, wearables, location-based services, activity-based services, personalization, comfort, well-being, all these things are in the industry, in the lighting control industry everywhere. It's a big emphasis on it. So why lighting? Why companies like Lutron and others, not just us, think lighting is a very important thing? It's kind of obvious if you think about it a bit, right? Wherever there are people, there is light. It's as simple as that. In any building, in every building, you install lighting control system, and you basically have a distributed network of devices with the potential for connectivity. And if you keep pulling on that thread, why is lighting important? So this is a study, I can share it with you if you're interested. Basically what this is telling you is, if you look at a building, a business, any business, energy amounts for about $3 per square foot. The building itself is about $30 per square foot, so that's an order of magnitude higher. But the biggest investment, by far, is people. The staff, that's the biggest asset in any building. So anything that you can do to improve on the energy savings is completely shadowed by a negligible fraction of productivity loss. So this is the goal for all, certainly in the lighting control industry and lighting industries, to go after that section over there. This is very important. And it's not Lutron by any means saying this. This is a study by the ZVEI. This is the German Industrial Electrical Association. Studies are available. I can send them to you if you want. And basically what it's saying, you don't have to read all of that. The point of it is we have evolved to be outside under the sun, not inside a building in a conference room. And it tells you that good lighting impacts your feeling, how you feel about the space, how well you perform, and health. Health is critical here. So in short, good lighting is essential. And lighting is everywhere, again. But this is an IoT thing, so what about the data, right? The data is key. And if you know anything about the lighting industry, it's very difficult to get people to go from basically a 5-core cable that is used to power up your lights and an LED driver to the cloud. This is a challenge that we face every day. People don't understand how to do it. It's very complicated. So what we offer as a controls company is an easy to install infrastructure. So I'm going to show you a quick example here. So imagine, if you will, that this is 8 fixtures in a conference room, for instance, right? So in the UK, it's typical to have these fixtures connected to what is called marshalling boxes or LCNs. You've heard the term. Basically, they are landing boards around the ceiling to facilitate plugging fixtures to them. So now you can connect a device to those devices, and now you have connectivity and wireless. Now you can add a wireless sensor or a personal control device. Or you can add what is called a hub in our case, other companies call it something else. This is basically a brains in the system with a Wi-Fi connection and the connectivity to the devices. So now you can bring in smartphone control or smartphone commissioning. But also, you can bring in the cloud. So you can start doing some data crunching and provide added value. So how do you do all these things, right? What is the technology that enables these benefits? So there is a lot out there, right? A lot of solutions out there. Bluetooth, we all know about Bluetooth, Zigbee, dot, Thread, and more. This is just a snapshot, right? So what is this telling us? That you need to worry about connectivity. And not every connectivity solution solves all the problems. They are very good for certain things, other things are not so good. But largely, you need to worry about 3 main things: security, performance, and interoperability. Security, must. Blockchain, obviously, very important. Performance, this is more on the application side of things, right? So if you think about it, you walk into a space, you press a button, you want the lights to come on instantly. If not, it's a life safety situation. You need to have light to be able to move around. If you have a lot of latency, this may not happen. Sometimes it's bad, but sometimes it's really, really dangerous. So it's something to think about. And interoperability, when you have a lot of devices coexisting in the same space, if you think of building, fixtures from different manufacturers may not all work together, you need to make them all work together. So it's important to have some level of connection. So a diagram for it could be this. So showing here a mesh network between the fixtures and an access point. This is a centralized network. Point being, it all ends up going to the server and then up to the cloud for other services that you can build on top of all this technology. And what we've done here so far is basically facilitate all of this, abstract all of this complexity from a contractor or an installer or an electrician. Because all we ask them to do is install our little green boxes, in our case, and you can get all of this on top of it. And this is where other companies, other services can be really, really useful and complementary to our industry as well. So here I want to talk about from data to wisdom, which is about the data is good, is necessary, obviously, but it's not the complete story. You need to do something with it. And there is a lot of data out there, lots of data. But it's a bit fragmented because all the data that's out there is not being shared. There are a lot of company interests, there are a lot of issues related to privacy, all sorts of things going on. But we all want the same thing, really, which is to really tell the customer how to turn this data into gold. How do you get a benefit out of this? And this is really a challenge for all of us. And maybe for you, some of you may be working on it, maybe you don't, I do not know really. But this is really the challenge. Connectivity is half the answer. Having things talking to each other is necessary, but it's not a solution. You really need to add value. So how do you go from having data all the way to having value delivered at the very end? And this is basically what the industry is going through. And it's not just the lighting industry, it's every industry really. The connectivity is really important and necessary. But I want to, the last slide that I have is basically re-emphasize that what you really need to care about is that. How do you deliver value to the people? If you don't take care of that, from our perspective, you won't really be successful in delivering a good solution to anybody. And that's it.
Just waiting for a second speaker. He should be here in minutes. Okay, cool. I think in the meantime it would be cool to know, in general, the public that is here. So maybe just a raise of hands, who has or is working at a company related to blockchain and cryptocurrencies? Just blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Higher the hands. Okay, not that many people actually. Cool. Who is working in a company related to data in general and not only focused on crypto or blockchain? Okay. Not that many people. Okay, who came here just out of interest about IoT? Cool. Okay, that's great. It's good because usually we have a much younger audience, I have to say, at our events. So it's, I think, depending on the topic of the event, it really makes the event very successful. So yeah, as I was saying earlier, just in the meantime that we're waiting for our second speaker, if you guys want to come and talk about whatever you want, subject related to data compliance, please reach out and get a event. And still waiting for the speaker.
long way. If you have any questions for me or anything you want me to go through again, let me know.
Yeah, feel free if anyone has questions actually.
Actually, I do have a question. What sort of technologies do you generally work with? Is it hardware, is it software, is it a combination of the two, or is it just the planning stage of things and the architecture of it? Just to understand the business model a little bit more.
So Lutron basically is very much focused on delivering the user experience. So many companies care about selling components. We very much take care of the performance of the solution. So we handhold pretty much the whole process. We have estimators that do lighting design, and we also have technical services that can do commissioning. We do training, and then we can do meetings and events like this, so we educate the market a lot. We get involved in all aspects of it. So we have different people doing different things, basically. Yes.
Great talk. Do your systems deal with color temperature at the moment?
We do, yeah. Although that is a bit of a, it's in research, not research, I'm not fair. A lot of protocols are out there that don't really provide a consistent color temperature output. So something that we are still trying to figure out is how do you combine products from different manufacturers when we say we want this to be 7,000 Kelvin, that they all look the same. So like back to your question, we work a lot with lighting designers, and if there is inconsistent light output or performance is really our core value as a company. So we don't really go for cheap and cheerful, we really go for high-end, very well presented, and doing what it should. And you can see, if you've seen some of the devices we have around, a lot of attention to detail.
How difficult is it to measure color temperature?
Yeah. So a lot of things are involved in that, even as simple as daylighting, so you can change the light levels of your fixtures based on the outside ambient light. Even the carpet, the furniture, the people in the space impact that. So either you have a very tightly controlled closed loop system in the fixture, or even when you deploy it in a space, even the more tightly calibrated is going to be little variations. Like everything. To make it perfect is basically you start seeing diminishing returns at some point. You can only get it so good unless you do it on site with the furniture and to kind of benchmark it that way. So it's complicated, but there is work being done on it.
I can add, if you look, if you Google or photometric report and on the color, you will see how complicated it can be to get perfect color, you know, on all the
rendering,
on all the fittings.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is about this data to wisdom, data to actionable insights. How did you go about establishing the internal company process of getting the data and turning it into actionable insights? Do you do it internally? Do you have a team of data scientists? Do you also do it for clients?
So we have, I don't know that I would call them data scientists. We do have a lot of people looking at how do you turn all the data that we have gathered with our sensors into useful information. We technically call it actionable data, but we look at things today like special utilization reports, providing information on how the building is being used, how often and where. So if you look at a co-working environment, we do a lot of stuff with that. We show them which areas are free and which areas are used most of the time. So we do a lot of work with universities as well to look at how to pair with data analytics and then display it with our UX teams so it makes sense and it's simple.
And do you think there is a lot of power in it, or is it basically
so if you remember that chart, the 330, 300 story, the $30 per square foot, that's the building. So there's a huge value in looking at how a space is being used, how to optimize performance, predictive maintenance, that's huge. A new one that's going to come, a lot of what's being done today is about asset tracking, but that's not quite enough. You need asset management. And what I mean by that is if you have, say, like a luminaire, and you can see what it is, obviously, but if you need to know things like runtime, and at what temperature, and at how many hours per day, and which light settings. That's more of the asset management kind of things. And that's completely under our control because we are connected to it. Now imagine, I don't know, in a factory, a machine running around being used for something. Being able to tell what it is not enough. You need to get a lot more diagnostics from it. So that's the industrial aspect of it that's going to come. That can be helped through the deployment of lighting control systems. So it's a lot of opportunity.
Can we get the questions? There's going to be a Q&A right after the
Yeah, the presenter is here, maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you for taking the time. Cool. So now we're going to have Michele come and talk about the IOTA Foundation. I'm just realizing actually some of you might not have known or heard about IOTA until now. So there's this quick 1:30 video while Michele is getting ready that explains pretty nicely what IOTA is.
The first open source distributed ledger that is being built to power the future of the Internet of Things. The technology empowers smart manufacturing with feeless microtransactions and data integrity for machines, cryptographically secure in a decentralized way, and with communication happening machine to machine. IOTA is being used for any sort of information transfer during the production processes in the smart factory. In the future, a digital twin is stored in a tangle and is a digital representation of everything in the factory. This ensures that a machine is running the correct software, enables continuous and precise data analysis, and predictive maintenance. In the factory, machines are acting autonomously, earning and paying digital money for their services, and exchange of material and other resources in real time. This fully interconnected system reacts to its condition and performs instant self-optimization. As material is handled and transformed into parts and components, the data follows the material, effective and transparent operations resulting in massive efficiency gains and quality improvements. IOTA technology provides trust in this steady flow of data. A secure and tamper-proof audit trail for the machine's operations is established. IOTA is fast becoming a key enabler for this Industry 4.0 vision. Please contact the IOTA Foundation to collaborate around the most inspiring and groundbreaking industry transformation in our lifetime.
That's cool. Okay, Michele.
It should go full screen or it's already?
Yeah, I think you should be able to.
Should be right. That's good. It's quite a cool start because just arrived. So I could have 2 minutes. Sorry about that. Training were late. Hopefully Alex is behind me, the other presenter. I don't know how much time we have.
15 minutes?
15 minutes.
20 minutes.
Okay, so we'll keep it short. She's good. You mentioned that not all the people knows about IOTA maybe, so I think the presentation have a quick overview of the technology. I'm gonna talk about data marketplace. I want to explain how IoT data are actually good, but they're currently siloed and used for their own service and their own application where they are collected, and what will be if data can be shared, can be mixed across different silos. So very quickly, what is the IOTA Foundation? IOTA Foundation is the organization behind the IOTA protocol, something that we have seen now presented in the video, and who is actually promoting the use of the technology, other than keep developing the technology. It's made of more than 90 employees so far. It's running through donations that we receive from community that actually believe in our project. I'm not going to explain how this donation came to us. We currently have a large network of developers, more than 70,000, and a large network of content followers. We not only receive money from donation to develop the technology, but we also empower others to develop on top of IOTA. We run what we call Ecosystem Development Fund, which actually will grant in the future up to $13 million of dollars, and so far it did for 150K. I don't know if it's the latest figure, so probably we already awarded more than 1,500, sorry, $50,000. Yeah, and the ecosystem of partners that we currently have is larger than under the entity. So we have IOTA as a technology for distributed ledger. As a organization, we are also distributed. We are in Berlin, Tel Aviv, Oslo, Taipei, and a bunch of people working here in London. Now we are roughly 8-10 people. Two of my colleagues are here. Godefroy is as well colleague running the IOTA Evangelist Network, and I work for IOTA as a lead analyst. Again, this is our board. So, okay, what is IOTA? So IOTA is a distributed ledger. Probably you have heard about distributed ledger, blockchain. Why we are not yet another blockchain? We are something different. So the initial vision was to propose something different from existing blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, where the main challenge was to solve some of the problems that this technology has. So the main problem of this technology is scalability. And the main issue is that how it works, blockchain, Bitcoin, have to create what you call block of transaction. And this transaction comes through a very time-consuming and energy-consuming and power-consuming process, which is called mining. And this is performed by miners. And this is performed by taking all the pool of transactions that you want to validate one by one and ordering this transaction and process this transaction sequentially. So this creates a bottleneck. So because all the resources, in order to guarantee integrity and trust in a decentralized network, need to operate in the same way for the same task. So this creates obviously a bottleneck. When you want to create a chain of block like the blockchain, of course all the resources are not used wisely because they all work on the same block at the same time. So what was the difference with IOTA? IOTA create a different data structure, which is not more a chain of block, a blockchain. It creates what we call mathematician call DAG, direct acyclic graph, and it's basically not anymore a chain of block. It's a graph. What this graph means? Every node in the graph, every vertex in the graph represents a transaction. And every edge line between transaction represents an approval line. So, cutting the story short, with this data structure, what is possible is that each transaction can be mined, let's call it this way, validated by two other transactions, two other nodes in the network. Doesn't require all the nodes in the network to focus on that transaction. So, as you can see now, if you can focus on what was the previous picture, so you see something that is much more distributed, doesn't require anymore to have a sequence of blocks that is created sequentially, time after time, but is created in parallel in a more distributed way. So each transaction you can see can be is requiring only two input, which is the validation path from another transaction, and doesn't require all the transactions to work on the same at the same time. So this creates a much more distributed structure, which we call the tangle, which is the one that you can see on the right side, which is actually evolving over time, and create all this line of approved transaction in a much more efficient way. As a result, if you are already familiar with Bitcoin blockchain, you have heard about incentivizing mining, incentivizing this work. If you want to transfer Bitcoin from one account to another, that's not enough. You need to add what is called fees, what is called incentive also for the mine. So that brings your transaction ahead of the queue that you have seen before. In IOTA, because of this equalization of resource, this distribution of effort, there is no need for incentivizing the network to do this. And we can achieve transferring of money in this case, or transferring of information on top of a distributed ledger without any fees. So IOTA is feeless, doesn't require to add extra to what you are actually putting into the network. And makes this very suitable for transferring information. So if you want to transfer information, basically what you do in distributed ledger technology, in Bitcoin or whatever, even in Ethereum, usually you attach your information as a payload of the transaction. So basically if you want to, let's say, route this information inside the ledger, so get this information into the same validation process that a transaction that transfer money from A to B goes, and assume the integrity immutability that this information has, you just attach your data, whatever, as a payload of the transaction. But if you think about Bitcoin blockchain, when you do this, you have to transfer money because you have to incentivize this validation process made by miners by sending money. So this means that when you want to send information through the Bitcoin, you want to route this information and be this information immutable into the ledger, you need to pay some price. And this price depends on the cost of the Bitcoin, which we know is very fluctuating. If you go back to what IOTA does, IOTA has no fees. So this allows you to send information, even if you think again as a payload of a transaction, to a transaction that actually doesn't transfer any value, because you can initiate a transaction from one account to another account, which is zero value, and doesn't require any extra cost for incentivizing the mining process, because it's feeless. So this really allows you to use the ledger, which initially is born and as the purpose of transferring money, for transferring information, for sending information, for saying this information has been agreed between the parties and is immutably stored into the ledger. So this makes IOTA very suitable for, first of all, large number of transactions, because it doesn't require this kind of incentive, this kind of cost, and for scenario like Internet of Things, where there is a lot of transaction, there is a lot of data generated, there is a lot of small chunk of data that you want to secure and transfer using the ledger, and doesn't require all the cost of having that. As a result, IOTA is highly scalable, it's zero fee, we said already, works because the protocol didn't go into detail how the protocol works for validating the transaction and achieving consensus, but it's very low resource requirement, and a few other products that really match and work well with IoT. So as I said, because of this property, our focus is on IoT. As I said in the introduction to my presentation, there are a lot of IoT data currently. They are expected to grow. Number of devices, number of data that they are growing over time, and we expect numbers keep changing. We're expecting 100 billion of devices connected. Number are growing and growing, but now we move from 2020 to 2025, we will have more and more devices connected, more and more data. But all these data are currently just siloed. So you create data, you need a new application, you need new data, you create this new data, you silo this data, use for that application. But what if you can start to share this data? So to sharing this data, there are a few challenges, because who's owning the data? Let's call data provider. Data, I wouldn't call data owner, because especially depending on the type of data, there is a lot of debate. Owning the data, if it's personal data, it's data generated by my device, by my Fitbit or whatever, mine or Fitbit the owner. So I will call them data provider, who's actually empowering to create data and then generating and store the data locally. So if this data want to go out of the silo where they're created, so there is a lot of trust, because you need to know what the third party is doing with the data, what the third party will actually do with the data that they want to access. There is also the need for eventually get paid and accounted for this data, and eventually this data, the overall payment system and the overall exchange of data cannot be running on an infrastructure that already requires cost. Otherwise, if you think again to the previous example, I have done also some study in the past. If you want to transfer data with an infrastructure that already costs you that transfer, then the data will have a price. And especially for small data, and when you need a lot of data, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the cost of acquiring this data. So having an infrastructure that allows to track this without transaction fees and without any cost will also help. And you need to have an infrastructure that allows you to establish this immutable accountability that allows to track who is getting involved. And avoiding that as well, you are exchanging garbage. So if you are exchanging garbage, because garbage in, garbage out, you want to be sure that this transparency can be given. So you need a network that allows decentralization and allow transparency. So IOTA can do that because of the property that we said before, and can empower a new business model. To prove this, we create what we call data marketplace. So data marketplace is a space that born in 2017, and that a lot of commitment from different organizations that want to exploit the possibility of, okay, we have this infrastructure that allow us to publish which data we have and allow others to decide which data they want, third party, which data they want, and eventually acquire this data and get this data into their system and then start to play and eventually pay it back. So this was the concept of the data marketplace. Initially was a place where data could be posted, and then eventually data could be acquired and could be shared, could be used to build the application outside of the silo where they were created. And it was just a way to experiment new business model. But this evolved into something that is actually now a product, which we are not selling, but we are releasing as open source, which is a place that allow who has data to connect their device and to send this device to the Tangle, our distributed ledger infrastructure, that allow to store this data immutably in a way that cannot be tampered, and there is a possibility to know that there is integrity. What actually this marketplace does is that data, when the data are stored into the Tangle, are actually stored through what I skip now is a second layer protocol that we created, which we call masked authentication messaging, MAM. So what this second layer protocol does? So this second layer protocol use the data ledger to create a sort of, let's say, pub-sub mechanism. I would say it's not public subscribe, but allow the data owner to create a channel, which is a private channel that he only have access initially to store his data into the Tangle. And this channel can be encrypted. So if you are the responsible of an IoT device and you want to connect, or a data source, let's call it this way, you want to connect this to the Tangle, you just start to publish data into what you call your MAM channel. So this MAM channel is a sequence of transactions that each transaction brings a portion of the data, and all these transactions can be linked one to each other. So you can have the real stream of data that you are putting into the Tangle. So, and this allows you to encrypt this data, first of all, and be the only one that knows where these data are stored into the Tangle, the first point where the first data is stored into the Tangle. With this technology, a buyer of your data need to access from you, the data owner, without a third party and any intermediary, the point in the Tangle where this data starts, where this data can be read, and the key to read this data. So basically the marketplace, the IOTA data marketplace, is a place that allows the demand and offer to come together, but gives the tool for the who own the data to exchange peer-to-peer the information that the buyer need to for accessing the data. And nobody else. If you're not buying the data, you cannot access to this route in the MAM channel, you cannot access to the key to somehow decrypt the data. And on the other way, there is a payment flow that goes back to the provider of the data. These are all the functionality that are provided by the data marketplace. We have open API at the moment. We have open source software that can be downloaded and instantiated, and basically what you get is that you have possibility to add new device. When you add new device, you define the type of device, the type of data that the device sends, and you create, as a result of this, you can download simple script, that is the script that does all this logic that I explained before, that you install on your device, and this device starts to publish data into the Tangle, which are anyway secure and stay there. Only if a transaction happens and your data published on a front end, somebody wants your data, you need to open an IOTA account, which is can be done for free and can be done in an automatic way, and you get a number of tokens for buying your data. This running on a development network, so that the tokens are just used for the exchange, are not buying to real currency, real money. And you can start to trade data. At the moment, as I said before, there are almost 80 partners using the data marketplace. It's open source, and there is a repository where you can access this and you can try this. I'm still at time. So we have a few scenarios where we are testing this. One of the scenario I'm involved is part of, I think, is here. It's part of a project that we call Plus City Exchange. So basically, the data that are in the data marketplace and traded to the data marketplace are data that basically relate to producer consumer of energy. So if you think about the aim of the project is creating a positive district, an energy positive district. So district in cities that can basically rely on energy produced through renewable form. And for doing this, you need to, from one side, to publish the demand of energy that a device needs, and the offer that other generator of energy can have. So if you think about solar panel that produce a given amount of energy during the day, if you think about a charging station that want to charge an electric vehicle that need to receive this energy, so you can meet the demanded offer of the different device if they can exchange this data. But this data belongs to different entities, so the provider, for instance, of the solar panel can be normal person living in any building that is the owner of the infrastructure. The charging station can be a charging station provider or company, so they are different. These data are siloed in their own system. So if they want to somehow meet in a common place, that could be the marketplace. So the owner of the charging station start to publish the demand of data, or start to publish yet the current level of the charging station as a stream into the channel, and as well the producer of energy through a solar panel again does the same in this example, and the service provider is the one that buys these two stream of data and create an application that allow people, depending on where they are, to know to which charging station they can go, because this charging station can receive energy for the solar panels located close by. So this is one way to use and liberate data that are actually siloed and used for different purposes in a common place, which become a marketplace and allow to create a new application. I think I will stop here because then it's getting more and more complicated. It's about personal data, why personal data as well can be traded using the MAM. If you think about the marketplace, you think about your data, you want to stay in control of this data. If you use again the technology provided by the data marketplace, in particular MAM, mask authentication messaging, your channel is private to you, your data goes into your stream, nobody gets access unless you don't give control to this channel with the information that I share, and then this information can be anytime removed, access can be anytime stopped. So it really gives you the possibility to have self-sovereign control of your personal information, even if it's shared to the marketplace. We are always keen to know more use case where you think that you are a data provider that can provide data, or you are a service provider that eventually can build on top of data that can be accessed to the marketplace. If you have a use case, if you have interest, we'll be interested to discuss and see how the data marketplace can help in this activity for liberating your data. I think this is just me plus other people, because involved into the data marketplace activity, if you want to know more, these are the contacts to look for.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, we can talk offline later.
We have 3 questions right now.
Oh, yeah, we can take, yeah, sure.
Anyone has 1 or 2 questions before we pass on the next?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the minimum kind of spec in terms of hardware required?
Okay, and there are people more qualified than me, but my answer will be at this stage, any device that can run a Node.js JavaScript, I would say. Are you saying for issuing transaction or for be part of the network and running the
network?
Okay, I think a normal computer with 4 giga of RAM or something like this.
Yeah, basic computer at present.
But if we're talking about a device, IoT device?
If you're talking about an IoT...
Yeah, so we have 2 different networks. One which will eventually merge into the real one, which is kind of built to run on embedded devices. So you have IRI, which is our reference implementation, which runs on Java, but we'll have a kind of new kind of network that's built on kind of
C?
Yeah, it's built on C. It's more like a distributed node software. So multiple devices form a single node.
So in terms of power, are we talking Raspberry Pi, or do we
Yeah,
go,
so currently
go down to Arduino?
So currently Raspberry Pis are being used. I'm not sure about Arduino. This isn't my specialism.
Certainly a Raspberry Pi can issue transaction. So I didn't show before, but when you see all these dots here, I call this transaction, right? But there should be a node. All the transaction goes to, all these are nodes, they go, and this node take charge of validating this transaction. So take one by one, but all of them different, not anymore like Bitcoin blockchain, and then they mine, they validate this transaction, right? These nodes, let's say it's a normal computer with 4 giga of RAM or something like this. The only requirement for memory, I think, is because when you do the validation, you need to keep in memory the tangle and see if this validation doesn't break any double spending rule. So that's the main requirement, so it doesn't require much. But if you're a device that issue a transaction and want to send a transaction to your reference node, what you have to do is very simple operation that a Raspberry Pi can do, and it's basically signature of transaction or things like this. And eventually you need to do a small proof of work, but it's the same way you use proof of work to avoid spam in email. So it's very light, but eventually this can be done by the device. If it's too much for the Raspberry Pi, it's done as a service by the node or other device that provide this kind of service. The only thing is, for what I know, is that implementation is currently in JavaScript. So basically you need to have a device that can run Node.js. But there is now development that brings this to C. So eventually, I would say that an Arduino maybe in future, in our view, could issue transaction as well. Having the Arduino to mine the transaction, I don't see the point. You can still imagine the nodes be part of your trust island. So let's say I have my local network here, I have a more powerful node that receives the transaction from my device, and this is trusted, and this is the node that interfaces with the rest of the network.
So you need the nodes that are like a laptop or something?
Yeah. If you want to be in control also of what's happening in that node, but you should be still, you can access any node in the network because it's a permissionless network in this instance, the way it works. So eventually every node can expose you the possibility to receive transactions. So basically what we have, when you send a transaction, the software basically, you need to decide for a provider. The provider is the node that you want to connect to be your entry point for the IOTA network. And this node receives that. So if you want to see, okay, I don't know what that node is doing with my transaction before it starts to publish into the network, then you run your own node, which is a laptop or let's say a small desktop computer or whatever.
So given Moore's law and all that, is the vision for it to be able to run on smartphones in a couple of years' time or not? What's the plan?
I think that's the vision.
Yeah, that will be the eventual approach.
How many years off would you see that?
It's all things that are currently being worked on kind of in alpha at present. So the ICT network is the kind of distributed node network that would run on embedded devices is already functioning, and people running on Raspberry Pis. It's still like a dev net, so it's not transacting proper tokens yet, but as I say, it's an alpha, so take from that what you will, like it's
The
next
point is
couple of years kind of thing.
The point is also always how much selfish you want to be, right? Because you want to be mining on your own transaction, and then you are the device that generates and validate its own transaction, or push the other transaction. But if you want to be cooperative in the network, you need to receive those transactions from the other, and this increases the load also of things that you have to do, and maybe moves you away from doing this on a mobile phone, but requires you to do it on a different device. Yeah, there are a few things, but yeah, the vision is to go there. But it's definitely not far, because it's not difficult for you to provide the node, the entry point for your local network with your local device. And it's not like deploying a mining farm like for Bitcoin blockchain. So, for instance, one simple example we don't have here that I didn't present, but we are working with a few companies. One is here, based in London, everything. Was supposed to have a presentation tonight, it will be next time. So basically, they receive data from their own network, but they don't want to push to any node in the network, and they want also to increase the speed of which this transaction gets accepted, so they deploy their own node for that. But in that way, you already got the trust from your local network, and then be your own device in your local network able to do the transaction validation process by itself, I think doesn't add much, because you, as local node, you already know that if something goes wrong, I'm sending transaction to you, you are responsible for that. So
Cool.
there are one more there and one more there if I'm fast, because I want to now.
You mentioned it a few times, validation. Can you explain a little bit more? What exactly is validated? Who is validator? And who assigned to be validator?
I didn't want to go into this. We can discuss.
Without that, it's not clear what is going on.
Yeah, but the presentation was on the data marketplace, wasn't in the
Maybe
detail of
together.
IOTA. Basically, when you get a transaction, right, as a node, you have to check that this transaction doesn't violate the double spending rule. So basically, you start from a transaction in any ledger that want to send money from A to B. So if you receive a transaction that says pay A to B with this kind of money, you need to check that A has the money that want to send. So for doing this, you need to go back and read all the history of transactions that involve A and see that A doesn't spend already this money, or is not trying to spend this money somewhere else. So that's the basic validation principle that you need to do in a distributed ledger or in a blockchain.
Okay, I'm just realizing we have 15 more minutes before we need to leave.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick panel of Charlie, Andrew, and Michele, and Miguel, also he's around, coming in front, and you guys can then ask any question you have related to IoT, data handling, etc. for the next 50 minutes. When you ask your questions, please be precise who you're asking the question to. And
There is Alex
please
before
be-
now.
Sorry?
When Alex speaks.
Is Alex here?
Yeah, it's
Ah,
alive.
okay,
Yeah.
who's Alex? Oh,
Okay.
then Alex, I didn't know you were here.
Great.
So Alex Sewell is from ThinkStream, actually.
Yeah.
And he will do then a quick, unfortunately, 15-minute presentation on
sure.
on ThinkStream.
Well, thanks. Evening, everybody. Having a nice evening. I'm just interested, actually, how many of you are working on blockchain deployments at the moment, or blockchain projects? 2, 3. How many are working on IoT projects? Some more, but not so many more. It's getting more balanced, that's good. My name's Alex Sewell, I work for ThinkStream. I'm the Partner Development Director at ThinkStream, and we're a global low-power connectivity network. Just a little bit about our company. We're a spin-off from a Swiss company called the Myriad Group, which has been supplying software to the telecoms market for some 20 years now. We've inherited from our parent company a very experienced developer and executive team who have successfully built and sold numerous startups in the kind of telecoms and IT marketplace. And we've also inherited a very proven and scalable technology to support our offering. And that's been processing around 1 billion transactions a week. We're actually working with over 600 different mobile network operators as well. And we've got strategic alliances with some quite large enterprises such as Software AG, Tivco, and Jersey Telecom, to name but a few. Well, how many of you have been exposed or have been working with low-powered wide area network technologies out of interest? How many of you are familiar with this kind of subject matter or have an understanding of it? Have some of you heard of Sigfox and LoRa? I'm sure you have. And some of you have heard of NB-IoT more recently, I imagine. And can any of you tell me what the most significant challenge of these offerings are? Any suggestions there? There's one thing that all of them share a weakness of, and And that's really that they don't have global coverage today. So there isn't these networks ubiquitously around the world today. And guess what we do? We fill that gap basically. We've got a low-powered wide area network that is global today, essentially, and we fill this gap. Lots of companies are trying to deploy IoT devices at high volumes to track assets potentially around the world that roam across borders, across different countries and across continents. And today there is no solution, no low power solution that addresses that issue. And we are filling that gap essentially. So we offer seamless global connectivity. We're leveraging 600 cellular networks across the globe, covering more than 200 countries in fact. And we don't expose any IP address, so we're quite secure in that sense. We're working with Rolls-Royce at the moment, for example, and one kind of facet of our offering that they're very attracted by was that we aren't exposing an IP address, so the kind of security attack vectors are reduced in that sense. Our offering also doesn't roam to a particular network. It will look for the strongest network to connect to, and this optimizes your power consumption, which is very important if you have devices in the field that are relying on a battery. You want them to live in the field as long as possible. This topology really explains or illustrates what topology of our offering, of course. And essentially, you embed our connectivity, a SIM card and an SDK, within a device, a tracking device, for example, or it could be a fire alarm or something like that. You embed our SDK within that and couple that with a SIM card, a globally roaming SIM card, and then you start to transmit data, low payloads of data, across what we call a USSD network. I'll come on to USSD shortly, but it is a standard of the GSM network that not many people are familiar with, that we've been exploiting for some 20 years for different use cases, such as pay-as-you-go devices and that sort of thing. And we use an MQTT broker. Some of you may have heard of MQTT. It's a messaging protocol developed by IBM and Eurotech some years ago. I'll speak more about that in a moment as well. And so your devices, essentially, your things-screen-ready devices, transmit data over our network to our core platform, where it's then administered and passed on to whatever applications, business systems you're using. This tells you a little bit more about USSD, Unstructured Supplementary Services. In Latin America and Africa, for example, they use this service level of the GSM network. The other three service levels of the GSM network are SMS, data, and voice, which we're all familiar with, of course. But as soon as you make a call, as soon as you land in another country, the first thing your phone does is connects to the USSD service layer to kind of authenticate you. And it says, yes, you can have voice, yes, you can have data, yes, you can have SMS, for example. And so it's the foothold, you could say, of the GSM network. And unlike SMS, it uses real-time connection sessions and allows you, unlike some of these other low-powered wide-area network offerings, allows you two-way exchange of data to and from your device and business applications. And it covers all of these different standards that you're all familiar with, 2G, 3G, 4G, for example. Any questions on this at all? Is anyone familiar with USSD? Has anyone heard of it? If you go to Latin America or Africa, it's commonly known. Yeah, USSD, as I mentioned earlier, is a core part of the 3GPP or GSMA network, and it works across all those generations of different network technology. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we use a messaging broker called MQTT-SN. The SN variant of MQTT was designed for Zigbee, for constrained devices, essentially. And that's what we've used to develop our own agent, our own SDK. and we are sending these messages over a USSD network. I mentioned MQT earlier. Yeah, it's the most commonly used IoT messaging protocol today. Most IoT deployments are using this, or they're using HTTPS, which is not very sensitive to battery consumption. In the interest of time. Yeah, it's a lightweight event and messaging orientated protocol, allowing devices to, as I mentioned earlier, communicate two ways between your device and the server, rather than with some of the other low-power wide area network offerings just in one direction. And as I mentioned earlier, it reduces your battery consumption, your device battery consumption, compared to these traditional, some of these traditional kind of messaging protocols. So just to recap really, we've got this global network. It allows you to transmit data wherever your device is in the world. There's no IP address, so there's additional security offered. And the device will hop onto the strongest signal strength rather than one that you've steered your device onto, which again reduces and optimizes power. We also offer, some of you might be familiar with this. This is Node-RED. We've essentially hardened Node-RED and associated it with a very scalable and robust, elastic back-end. So it's more production ready rather than a hobbyist type of tool. Lots of developers are familiar with this this tool, and so we've kind of incorporated it into our offering. But once you receive the traffic from your ThinkStream ready devices, you can shape and steer that traffic to business systems. So we've got nodes developed, for example, for Microsoft Azure's IoT platform, for Software AG's Cumulosity IoT platform, for AWS, etc. And so you can very quickly steer your traffic to different business systems, and you can transform the data from this MQTT protocol I mentioned earlier to HTTPS or Modbus or whatever language you want delivered to your systems. And our value proposition is really we take care of a lot of these roaming fees and security issues and brokers. Our customers don't need to go and search for this. We offer it within our stack, essentially, reducing your total cost of ownership. And this is our kind of pricing plan. And your devices can send up to 500 messages per month for just 25 US cents. And each message can be up to a payload of 4K, which is pretty significant compared to some of the other low-powered wide area network offerings. And these are some of the use cases we address. So tracking of assets, whether they're moving or static, and at different intervals. So it could be once a day. You know, Rolls-Royce are monitoring their engines, for example, their diesel engines, and they're looking for anomalies on those diesel engines. If they're not vibrating in a familiar pattern, if they break outside of a certain threshold, they'll send an alert, essentially. So that could be one message a month. But these kind of assets might need to report more frequently. And if you don't want to use our network, you can use our MQTT broker, essentially. And so for businesses, you can just pay $1 a month to transmit 50,000 messages over whatever network you'd like to, and developers can use that for free. I mentioned Rolls-Royce earlier. They're not only monitoring anomalies on their diesel engines, the German division of their diesel engine manufacturing plant, but they're also monitoring the supply chain, the parts that make up these diesel engines, essentially, to improve their visibility of their supply chain. That's one of our showcase reference cases. As far as our relationship to blockchain is concerned, we would just form part of that overall system, essentially. So we would be sending data into a blockchain environment, you know, where you have devices kind of remotely distributed or dispersed, whether that be on a farm or traveling over land somewhere or overseas. Yeah. Go on, Karen.
You said you will be doing, or you're already doing with the blockchain?
We're not currently working with, well, we are exploring blockchain.
Okay, so you're interested to explore a concept like
Yeah.
the data marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. We think we're a good fit with blockchain applications.
I think so, because data are a small chunk of data as well. And,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
especially with IOTA.
Okay, great. Any questions on that at all? Good.
You said no IP address. How the device is identified? By SIM card ID?
Those kind of things, yeah. There are different tags that you can associate with
Like
SIM.
MAC address?
Yeah, MAC address, SIM card numbers, IMSI numbers, those sort of things. Yeah, you can select that. We tag the SIM card reference. You might tag other serial numbers from those devices, or from components of those devices.
How big are these devices that you're talking about?
Well, they could be as big or small as you like, really. They tend to be small because they're delivering small packets of data. We've got like an Amazon Dash button, for example. And there's a big pharmacy in the States that is using that for their customers to reorder their medication. They just press the button. It doesn't rely on Wi-Fi. It doesn't rely on one particular network. It roams across all networks, so they don't have to worry about that. It's a very small device, half the size of this. We've got tracking devices kind of this big. And we're working with the likes of Dell, for example, who have got bigger edge computing devices that are embedding our SDK and SIM card, and they're about so big. Generally, they're smaller devices, but you have to fit a battery in most of these things, and so batteries vary in size, of course. We don't build the devices ourselves. Our partners build those, and they embed our SDK. And
so that's just a piece of software, basically, that you embed?
We're a software vendor with an agent and a SIM card that roams globally. Yeah, so you don't have to mess around with infrastructure and gateways and this kind of thing.
So you have to build building the port for a SIM card or a connectivity to the SIM card in your device, and then use your SDK to with that information.
Most devices have a module with a place for a SIM card, whether it's a small SIM card or a plastic or a rugged.
Who's dealing with the power management? How much savings in power, for example, will we get with this compared if we use regular SMS?
Well, compared to cellular data, I think I mentioned there, it's up to 170 times. It's using up to 170 times less data. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, our MQTT TSN broker, designed for constrained devices and for small amounts of data, is really shortening and reducing the payload that's sent over the network, and therefore consuming less battery. As I mentioned earlier, also we're steering onto the strongest signal automatically, and that's reducing the amount of time it takes to connect to a network, and that reduces battery. We're working with Sigfox, NB-IoT, and LoRa partners today, and they are reporting very competitive battery consumption levels compared to those other LPWAN offerings. We're just on Thursday, someone from Madrid, one of our partners from Madrid, told us that from the tests he's done so far, the device that he's testing could run for 20 years or something like that. Another partner has told us that we're very conservative about the amount of the benefit of our battery consumption compared to Sigfox. We're very similar, but so yeah, compared to cellular data, we're much more efficient. Thank you. Any other questions at all? Yeah,
I just wanted to ask a question, because you're saying that you're using the IMSIs, but if you're using IMSIs, potentially somebody could look up via HLR your location of your device, which is third party. How is that, or is there any protection against that?
Well, because there's no IP address.
Yeah, but I mean, in a GSM network, any SIM card has its own. Like IMSIs are globally globally unique, right?
Yes.
So if I know your SIM card's IMSI somehow,
yes,
I can triangulate your location to the GSM boxes that you're connected to. So essentially, I can know your location. You're doing an HLR lookup. That's a big business around HLR lookups. And companies are essentially tracking people and assets remotely without being actually
open about it. So your SIM card is vulnerable to some third party tracking it. Is that protection?
Well, if they can source those IMSI numbers, for example, if they can source them, and then they need to locate your device, of course.
Yeah,
and then they need to be able to hack it, and they need to sit next to a base station in order to hack the USSD service level of the network.
Maybe bring that offline.
That's a good question.
Because SS7 network for SMS sending and the whole backbone connectivity.
We're not using the cellular network, remember. We're not using the cellular network. We're using a different service level. It's not data.
No,
this is a session that's opened.
Yeah, but it's kind of the SSD, it's sort of like the headers of TCP connection. Or just
there's no TCP IP.
No, I know, but I mean the SSD to typical network connections or the network connectivity is like the header information that goes through a data stream between two devices, just describing something, right? So essentially, if you're using IMSIs over a subset of the cellular network, then you're still vulnerable to some degree to attacks of HLR lookups.
Possibly, but I think I'll take your details after, and we'll get you a comprehensive answer to that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
A little bit more clarification. You say that somewhere in the slide 2G, 3G, 4G connectivity, and you said you're not using cellular network, so...
Okay. So for the USSD aspect of the network, we're not using a data network. For LTE, we will be using the data aspect of the network, but the IP address is still masked through our MQTT broker, essentially. Cool. Any other questions at all? Okay, thank you very much.
I'm realizing that we're a bit running over time, so we'll have to do, I guess, the panel another time. But I'm pretty sure the speakers will stay around for 5-10 minutes. We have 15 minutes in this office more. So please, talk to whoever you want. Alex, are you staying a bit more?
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. 3 people from the IOTA Foundation. Miguel's also is here to answer your questions around Luchon, to maybe show you a bit around the Experience Center also. And if you had a look over there, it's really great. And that's mostly it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for a bit of the delays here and there, but hope to see you at our next events. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to meet you. I think I'm actually at Blockchain Week, I think. I'm actually from company called Ohio. I actually cover the events that's happening in the UK. It was a great speech. It would be great to have a quick interview with you. If you have time, 5 minutes. I mean, we can.
I think we have to maybe check.
Maybe just I can send everything to you first. But it's like just one question, like what is IoT and how is IoT different than blockchain? Because, I mean, just 2 questions.
Yeah, that's
okay.
It's all fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Just want to be 100% sure and check with also our communication team.
Okay.
Which way you want to use then?
It's up to you really, because generally it's just like we cover all the blockchain media, like different blockchain networks and everything. It's great to have something quick into today, but I mean, I'm happy to send everything to you first.
Yeah, it's better to do these things really through our communications team, because then we can kind of follow the proper...
Yeah, to be honest.
All right, no problem.
But drop us an email. You probably can give you... I don't have a card. But,
yeah, I'll...
Because then we can also have the people most appropriate to answer these sorts of questions.
So just like one question, like why is IoT? Why is IOTA? Is that no? Yeah. Okay, if it's no, then it's no problem.
Yeah, it was a really good.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, we can answer the question because it's just a chat now. The only thing we probably need to be sure is that you publish and you say quote Charlie and Michael for having said this, and we need to be sure that this is something our communication is
No problem, but generally what we do is just we're trying to promote the blockchain industry. Okay, I mean it's a non-profit thing, it's like 5 of us friends started this. It's quite, but it's just not a problem. Thank you.
No, drop me an email and we can arrange a time to talk maybe.
Yeah, no, it's nice
Nice to meet you. No, thank you. Thank you.
I haven't met you before, yeah, but
Thank you.
If I may. First, that was awesome. Thanks so much for coming out to that. I'll be honest, I didn't know about IOTA until I saw the meetup this morning. And I'm like, whoa, this shit's cool. So my question is this.
So we have a partner